Alright guys, today's goal, the learner will understand the difference between probability and odds. Alright, so both of these deal with experiments or theoretical probabilities or odds. So before we get into that, it says a possible result of an experiment is an outcome. You roll a die, there's 6 outcomes, possible outcomes. You could roll a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5, or a 6. An event is an outcome or collection of outcomes, like flipping a coin or rolling a die. So if you flip a coin, it's recording how many times did you hit heads. That's the event. The set of all possible outcomes is called the sample space. Okay, so first question here. You flip 2 coins and roll a 6-sided die. How many total possible outcomes are in the sample space? And list them. Okay, so how many total possible outcomes? Well, let's think about it individually. You go to flip one of the 2 coins. How many possible outcomes are there for the coin? Well, there's heads or tails, so 2. How many possible outcomes are there for the second coin? 2. You roll a 6-sided die. Well, it could be a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6. So what do we do with all these? Do we add them? Do we multiply them? Well, you multiply. So 2 times 2 is 4 times 6, so there's 24 total outcomes. What are they? Well, I just like to start with the coin, so I go heads, heads. And then couldn't I roll a 1? Heads, heads, 2. Heads, heads, 3. Heads, heads, 4. Heads, heads, 5. Heads, heads, 6. So that took care of going heads, heads. Now let's go heads, tails. Heads, tails, 1. Heads, tails, 2. Heads, tails, 3. Heads, tails, 4. Heads, tails, 5. Heads, tails, 6. Now switch it. Tails, heads, 1. Tails, heads, 2. Tails, heads, 3. Tails, heads, 4. Tails, heads, 5. Tails, heads, 6. What do we still have left? Tails, tails, 1. Tails, tails, 2. Tails, tails, 3. Tails, tails, 4. Tails, tails, 5. Tails, tails, 6. So there's 24 possible outcomes, and that's a list of all of the sample space. Okay? Alright, so let's start talking about probability and odds then. Because we need to be able to create these to find probabilities and odds. So if I said, what's the probability of getting 1 heads, 1 tails, and rolling a 1? Well, heads, tails, 1, heads, tails, 1, so there's 2 chances of success divided by 24 chances, so the probability is 1/12. Okay, so next slide here. Theoretical probability. That's what we just calculated right there. The number of favorable outcomes to the total number of outcomes. Okay? Experimental probability, number of success divided by the number of trials. So the difference would be theoretical probability is what we calculated, 1 out of 12. Experimental would be if you flipped a coin twice and rolled the die and recorded how many times each of the things happened, okay? So you toss a coin and roll 1 die. What is the probability the coin will show heads? And the number cube shows 1 or 4. Well, first thing we need to get, so we look, we're dealing with theoretical because we're not dealing with data. Number of favorable outcomes. Well, we could go heads 1 or heads 4. Is there any other way that we could do having coin and a number shows 1 or 4? Nope. Total number of outcomes. Well, how many outcomes are there when you flip a coin? 2. Roll a die, 6. 2 times 6, 12. So the probability is 2 out of 12, which is 1/6. So there's probability. The experimental probability would give you some data, and it would record how many times you got a 1 or a 4 in a heads divided by the total number, okay? So you got to be able to read some data. Odds. All right. So odds, probability deals with success divided by the total. Odds are success versus the unsuccessful or unsuccessful versus successful. It depends on if they want the odds in favor or the odds against. So you have a circle cut into fourths. So picture this. And they have red, green, blue, black. What are the odds in favor of spinning and landing on a red piece? In favor. So I look up here. What are the number of favorable outcomes? 1. So the odds in favor. 1. Unfavorable. Well, how many are not red? 1, 2, 3. What are the odds against spinning and landing on a blue? Well, so the odds against favorable outcomes not in blue are 3 to 1. Or let's say I said, what are the odds in favor of spinning and landing on a color that begins in B? Well, we have, so that's the favor. We have 2 that begin in B and 2 that do not, so the odds are 1 to 1. Okay? So there's probability and odds and how to create everything with the sample spaces. Okay? So there it is. You have 2 6-sided die. How many total outcomes are in the sample space? So you're going to need to answer that. And then what is the theoretical probability of rolling a total of 7? Adding up the 2 numbers on the die. So if I rolled a 1 on the first die and a 2 on the second, that would equal a total of 3. But I could also do that exact same thing by doing 2 and 1. So just be careful when we think about this. And just remember, if you're not sure, rewind and listen to how can you figure out the total number of outcomes. Okay, guys? So I'll see you guys tomorrow and bring this finished up for me.